What's the darkest secret you found out about a family member / relative? When I was a kid, we went to my grandma's house every Sunday and all of my uncles and aunts would be there. One day I noticed that one of my uncles didn't show up anymore, so I asked my family where he is. They told me that he won't be able to visit anymore because he moved away. Years later I found out that he raped and killed 2 women and they locked him up. Well, much like Reddington, they didn't technically lie. He did move away. My father tried to kill my mother while she was pregnant with me. Did he go to jail? No, he did not. I found out about this when I was 20. My mom told me in private. She said back then my father had a drinking problem and he would get really violent sometimes. She said something to him one time, so he grabbed a knife, pushed her next to an open window and put the knife at her throat. Made her choose between jumping from the 4th floor or get her throat slit. My mom said she cried and begged him to not kill her and think of the unborn baby, me. Some neighbors heard the noise and intervened. They managed to take the knife away from him. She was safe. Police didn't get involved. This was during communist times, so back then apparently domestic issues like these were ignored. This was one of the times he was violent with her. My mom is religious and doesn't believe in divorce. They're still together after 45 years. His violent tendencies toned down after me, and my brothers were old enough to knock him out if he tried that shit again. I'm the only one in my family, besides my mom, that knows this happened. I've always had problems with him, but I hated him bitterly after my mom told me what happened then and other times as well. I'm not a religious man, but I wish hell existed, just so he could rot in it. 2 years ago I found out that my dad had a wife before my mom, and she died in a freak accident on their wedding night. Edited, she was sleepwalking and fell to her death over the balcony, if anyone was wondering. That is devastating. Imagine having the best day of your life turn into the worst. Oh man. Your poor father. Stepfather was cheating on mother. Didn't find out because he was caught cheating. Found out because he and his mistress were drunk. Got in a fight. And he punched her so hard that she fell over and died. Found out about the whole thing during the investigation, the trial, and the conviction. Was weird to have a lawyer want to call 2-year-old me to a stand to defend the character of man I already had very little interaction and a fear of, and that was before the manslaughter charge. WTH, why were you involved in the case at all? Did your mom not leave him? Why would she or you be a character witness for someone cheating on her? Well, love and belief I guess interfered, and she wanted to believe he didn't have as much to do with it as he did. Went from lower middle CL butto struggling poor after that and never recovered. Positive note on this. My mom is fine now, and I'm too. And we have a wonderfully close relationship. Life just shits things out at you, and you gotta keep going. What I learned from that experience was immeasurably rough at the realization of how cruel existence can be. But my mom and I are each other's biggest fans, and even in the worst of times, we can pick each other up. I found out that my grandfather's first wife, before my grandma, died of botulism from eating some tomatoes she had canned at home. She could have been saved, but he refused to take her to the doctor because the botulism was her fault. He let her die to teach her a lesson. Edit, they had 2 kids he left motherless. Guessing she didn't have a choice in whether or not to be the one responsible for canning her own food. Either. Exactly. A few years before he passed, my dad and I had a long heart-to-heart, at the end of which, he told me he wasn't the one to first sleep with my mom on their honeymoon. He caught her in bed with her cousin, with which she had been in love for a long time. He spoke with their pastor, who told him to forgive and forget. That worked, until 6 years later, when he caught her again, with the same cousin. He told me he wanted to leave with me, but ultimately decided to stay, because he wanted me to have a family. With all that happened in my childhood, and to him, workaholic, diabetes, heart attack, I wish he'd left and be happy instead. Well, at least you know he loved you very very much. I know. The years before he told me, he became increasingly passive aggressive with my mom and I would get angry at him. After that discussion, I didn't care at all. It was their relationship, not mine. I tried for a long time to heal it. help them through it, but it is not my duty as their child to do so. My wife helped me understand that it was their shit to figure out, not mine. Even though my mom doesn't know I know. Maybe dad would have had a happier life had he left, instead of focusing on work. There is strong debate in our family as to whether my aunt fell out of the window of her flat, whether she jumped or was pushed. She survived, but with brain damage, and says she can't remember. Something similar happened to my grandma. She remarried after my grandpa died, and his family was crazy over how it would affect their inheritance. They lived in an old farmhouse that had a root cellar that could only be accessed along one side of the house. She was standing at the top of the concrete stairs and next thing she knew she was at the bottom. She has no memory of how it happened, and she still has trouble differentiating colors from her injuries. She suspects it was one of his kids, but we will probably never know. That's terrible and creepy, and I'm sorry. But on a side note, boy do I love English. She still has trouble differentiating colors from her injury. I can hear her calling her husband in from another room while trying to get dressed. Honey, does this blouse match my skirt? I feel like it's a little too brain damage. I mean green. Apostrophe. I found out from my dad that one of my cousins isn't related to anyone in the family. My aunt and her mother used to work at a hospital maternity ward, and apparently a woman came in one day and gave birth to him and then left the next day without him. My aunt decided to adopt him, but a few months later the woman showed up again asking where he was. They both lied that he was given up and didn't have a clue where he was. They still haven't told my cousin anything. I wonder what made her left and what made her come back. Postpartum depression is a hell of a hormone assault on a woman, and frequently the women end up feeling even worse, that they hate their own baby they are supposed to love. That alone can potentially be enough, but combine it with an unstable living situation and it suddenly occurs to them that the only way their baby could be happy would be with someone else. My great uncle is a rapist that prefers underage family members. I don't know how many people actually know, but my grandparents certainly do, along with his victims, my mom, aunt, and I know at least a few or their cousins, but I'm not sure which. But then he found Jesus again, so we all have to forgive him and pretend nothing happened. It was before I was born, but that's the basic runaround I've gotten from my grandparents. They don't ever actually acknowledge it, just that Tony did bad things, but he found God. I eventually put 2 and 2 together about my mom's history or sexual assault and her making sure that me and my female cousins were never left alone with him. And now that I'm in my 20s, that duty has been passed down to me at every family gathering. It's like an unspoken rule that you can't say why. Just the warning. Don't leave your daughters alone with him. I'm tired of it though. Tired of shooing little girls away and having to pretend like it's normal. Scoping toddlers out of a predator's arms and acting like everything's fine and I'm just baby crazy. When this is all over, I'm not going to stay quiet anymore. The next time I have to around him, I'm taking children right back to their parents with the full decking story of why it's dangerous. I'm tired of having to protect a rapist to keep peace. Why do you always take them away? Apostrophe. Because you're a rapist, Tony. God isn't thrilled about that. By the way. Apostrophe. My dad told me that before my mom and dad broke up, he hadn't been happy with her for several years. My mother even had a miscarriage at one point, which destroyed the both of them. But he couldn't leave her because he was afraid that she would hurt or even kill herself. So his only thought was to have a kid with her, so that motherly instinct would hopefully prevent her from killing herself. Are you the child that resulted? What a burden to have to carry. Well, the thing is, they both still wanted kids, so it's not that bad. The only problem was, my mom's body rejected my dad's sperm, meaning it wasn't easy to have me. With a lot of surgical help, they tried a total of 6 times in the hospital. The 3rd was a miscarriage, and the 6th was me, so they still went through hell to get me. Also, they broke up when I was 2, so I never really noticed anything, and the relationship between them has never been bad for me. Not really dark at all, but surprising. My mild-mannered Buddhist lawyer uncle was International Mr. Leather's Leather Daddy's Boy of the Year sometime in the late 80s. Rock on, Uncle Gary. I found out my father raped my sister when I was 11 years old. She was only 7 when he was sexually abusing her. Is he in prison? The person responded to their own comment saying, no. They said there wasn't enough evidence. Apostrophe. My biological grandfather threatened to kill my grandmother while she was very young and pregnant with my uncle. Long story short, he was engaged to someone else. My grandmother became a nervous wreck while pregnant and wouldn't leave the house, and he used to throw bricks through the window. Eventually she told some of her friends about what he'd threatened to do to her. Shortly after that he went missing, never to be seen or heard from again. We always kind of laughed and joked that one of her friends must have threatened him or ran him out of town. We would even go as far to say someone might have killed him for her. It wasn't until we were going through her boxes of photos and love letters we realized she was actually friends with the Cray twins. I think you have your answer, mate. Oh hell yeah. I found out that my great-grandpa got away with murder. He thought that my great-grandma was cheating on him with her dentist, so he went into his office and shot him. He got away with it too, and they didn't find out that he did it until he told everybody before he died. Edit. Since a lot of people are asking if she actually cheated on him, I don't know. But considering he was in a harlot that she was afraid to leave, and he ended up being capable of murder. Probably. My uncle tells the story that when he was a kid, his older brother wanted him to go out hunting with him in the woods near their house. They woke up really early and started walking much deeper into the woods than they usually did, and way off the normal trails they used. My uncle realized his brother was letting him get further and further ahead. He stopped and turned around to see his brother starting to bring the shotgun up in his direction. He asked him what the hell was he doing. His brother said, "Oh, I thought I saw something." My uncle decided to go back at that point. Later that week he went back and found a pit that someone had dug a bit further off the trail. He never went anywhere with his brother alone again. Edit. Holy shit. Did not expect to see all these responses when I got off from work. Okay. To answer some of the questions. Both of them are mom's brothers. The one, Abe Kane, was a narcissist of the not letting a silly thing like being married get in the way of his dating life variety, who decided he had big dreams and bailed on the family and his wife when I was a kid and proceeded to odd. Thus I usually don't think of him as my uncle because I didn't have a real relationship with him. Not sure why he didn't shoot my uncle, might have wanted it to look more like an accident, or didn't want to look his brother in the eye. For those saying it's just a story, yeah, I can't prove it, since there were only 2 people there, and one of them is dead now, of the aforementioned odd. But the way that my uncle described it, he was really afraid of his brother and thought he was capable of fratricide. WTF. How has he never said hey about that time you tried to kill me? Was there a motive he could see? Probably one of those things where you suspect a family member may be a psychopath and just want to stay away from it. One of my aunts raised another aunt's baby as her own. My mom had 4 sisters and a brother, all of whom got married and had kids. So I have around 20 cousins. Unfortunately 3 of my aunts got breast cancer in their 30s. All 3 recovered, but years later the youngest, Mariah, got it again and got it worse. Mariah needed a bone marrow transplant. All her sisters and children got tested, but no one matched. The family then revealed that Mariah had had a teenage pregnancy. Her first child was actually my cousin John, who had been adopted and raised by my oldest aunt as her second child. None of the cousins knew about this, including John and his revealed to be adoptive siblings. John was asked to get tested and was a match, so he agreed to donate bone marrow to his birth mom, Mariah. John was in his late 20s at the time and had had very little contact with Mariah over his life, so has pretty cool. The transplant took, but Mariah eventually succumbed a year or so later. Edit. My family is very aware of the risks of breast cancer affecting any of us. Luckily none of my female or male cousins have gotten it. We are all still vigilant and self-check ourselves regularly. Wow, that must have been a crazy roller coaster for him. Wait. My aunt is actually my mother. My mother is my aunt. My birth mother needs a bone marrow transplant, and I'm the only match available, and she dies anyway. Fuck. Apostrophe. I found out 2 years ago that my mother had a baby she gave up for adoption 18 months before she had me, and then had another baby when I was 3, and she also gave that baby up for adoption. All 3 of us have different fathers, and I think the only reason she kept me was because my father married her, but that marriage only lasted a year. My mother remarried when I was 5 and my half-brother was born when I was 7. As far as I knew, for 59 years he and I were our mother's only children. I never saw her pregnant with the second baby because she sent me to live with my great-grandparents across the country during her pregnancy. My mother and grandmother were the only people who knew about this, and they both took the secret to their graves. The only reason any of it was found out is because of all of the DNA testing people now do. This discovery really impacted my sense of identity for a while. My view of my mother and our relationship. I've met my half-siblings, an older sister and younger brother. I like them, and I'm glad I've been able to answer some of their questions, but the initial discovery really messed with me for a bit. Edit. This is only the 4th time I've ever posted in the 2 years I've had my account, and I barely know what to do with all of the messages and comments. I logged out after I posted yesterday and came back to find all of these comments/questions/awards today. I have to work, so I'll try and give some more info because I can't read everything right now. This happened in the mid-late 1950s. Condoms weren't available to teenagers at the time. There was no sex ed, no abortion, only unwed mother homes. She went to one when she got pregnant with my older sister because she was only 16. I don't know how my mother managed her pregnancy with my brother. She would have been around 21 years old and probably made up some story about a dead husband or divorce or something with the help of her mother. I have never done DNA testing, but the half-siblings have, including the one I grew up with, whom I've always called my brother, not half-brother. I think they all did Ancestry. The siblings found other relatives first and made their way to me eventually. I don't think I will ever do DNA testing. I'm done with surprises. The other relatives were the ones who told me about the siblings. The story is even wackier because the relatives were my mother's half-sisters from the father she never met, that she never knew existed. They found me 8 years ago after extensive genealogy research. I also have a half-brother from my bio dad whom I met for the first time right before COVID hit. I've known he existed since I was 19, but wasn't able to find him. He found me. I'm 62 now. My adopted siblings were better off. Both my parents and my stepfather are dead. I don't believe my stepfather ever knew about the adopted babies. I think the only other person who knew was my grandmother. I'm looking forward to reading all of the comments and other stories. It helps me feel a little less weird about the whole situation. Thank you for the awards. I don't quite know what they mean, but thanks. My dad found out in his 30s that his dad wasn't his biological father. He got cancer, and they found out it was from his father's side of the family, and my dad asked his dad about it, and the truth came out. He knew that he was a year older than his parents' marriage, but didn't know his father was a different man, because his parents were high school sweethearts. Apparently, they broke up when his dad went off to college and his mom dated someone else. When he found out, he found the guy and reached out. Turns out, BO father had given my dad's mom money for an abortion and walked out. He didn't even know my dad had been born. He told my dad to never contact him again, and that chapter of his life was over. My dad has half siblings out there that he isn't contacting because of the wishes of his BO father, kicking the can down the road until the half siblings take their own test. Our family is the secret one, and I keep having people on 23andMe contact me, puzzled as to how we could possibly be related. Surprise. Ask your grandma/grandpa. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.